You're listening to episode number 18 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. And this episode is a Q&A episode, and I'm going to answer Andrew's question. His question is, I am attracting clients who don't pay me, and I want to stop this as much as possible. Plain and simple, this is a money and personal value question. If you're afraid to ask for money or to charge what you're worth or your services are worth, then you're going to love this episode. Keep listening. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. So, the question this week is, I am attracting clients who don't pay me, and I want to stop this as much as possible. Well, that's not a question, it's a statement. However, it's what Andrew's dealing with. And I know right now that a lot of you listening, you're also dealing with this. You're not getting paid what you're worth. You're afraid to charge people. You're afraid to ask for a raise. You quite literally are afraid to ask for the reciprocal value that you put out into the world. And quite literally, that comes down to your identity. The rest of his email is, and again, if I'm a little choppy here, it's because I can believe, but the emails every week are half sentences, misspelled words. The grammar is generally atrocious. I'm just calling it like, I'm seeing them and I'm just telling you what I get. But anyway, he says, I guess I realize that it is happening too often. Therefore, if my reality is a looking glass to my habits and self-image, how can I change this? This pattern is also stopping me from breaking through revenue barriers. Well, my comment is how you change this is you change your identity, which we've talked about on multiple episodes. And obviously, yes, this pattern, which is an unconscious pattern, is definitely stopping you from achieving your revenue barriers. So let me ask you some questions here, Andrew. And for those of you that are listening along, if you can relate to anything that I just read or anything that I just said, as I'm asking Andrew these questions, I also want you to imagine that I'm asking you these very same questions. So question number one is, what do you think is causing you to attract clients who can't pay you? Consider that for a moment. What in you is causing people who can't pay you? We also live in a world where many people want things free. And my personal philosophy, even my friends that I work with professionally, many times people will want to do things for me free, and I do not allow it. And the reason why is because I believe that everything in life has its compensations and everything has value for the most part. And if I take value from someone, which means I take their energy and I do not exchange it, then basically I'm working in a vacuum in that moment. There's no what I call AYNI, AYNI, which is ancient Incan for the reciprocity of life. So when people give to me, I want to give back to them even more, even though that they say, well, you don't have to pay me. So the reason I tell you that is because that's where I work from when it comes to my money, consciousness and prosperity and vibration. But I'm going to tell you right now, and you know what? I can't judge because I've been there before, is that most, and I'm going to use the word most, and I thought about that word before I used it, most people want something from other people and they want it cheap and they do not want to pay for it. And then they wonder why they themselves are broke. Also, Andrew, I don't have enough information. And when you guys actually, when you write in If you could tell me what you do for a living, like Andrew, I have no idea what he does for a living, so I have no idea what it is that he says people can't pay him for. I don't know if it's massage or photography or, copywriting. I don't know. So if you guys can, when you write in, if you can tell me what you do without writing, the book War and Peace, that's a 500-page book, I believe. But if you can tell me what you do and give me a little more backstory, I can probably answer your question more fully. Also, Andrew, as I just said, you don't mention your service or your offering, so I don't know how to advise you about the marketing aspect of this because if I had to guess, and when I say, guys, when I say I have to guess, it's pretty much an educated opinion. I've been doing this a long time. And prior to moving exclusively into transformation, for 20 years, I've taught subconscious persuasion and influence as it pertains to sales and marketing and advertising. So what I know is there are two things in the equation here that are a challenge for you. One is your own self value and your self worth and your beliefs and your identity about charging people. And your second is most likely is your marketing platform, your branding, and your positioning. What I also know is that if people aren't paying you, that most likely means that you don't have a lot of money. And if it means you don't have a lot of money, it means you're not investing money back into your marketing, branding, and positioning, which there's a good chance, and I'm gonna throw darts here, but again, I've done this for a long time. There's a good chance that your marketing and your branding and positioning are all off, and you couple that with a less than stellar identity about creating wealth and asking for money. And at that point, you have a recipe for disaster financially. Let's go to the opposite end and let's look at branding for a second and companies and marketing. Do you think that Rolls-Royce attracts clients who cannot pay? Obviously Rolls-Royce is, everyone knows who Rolls-Royce is. I would think pretty much everyone. But you know what? It's because of their branding and positioning and their product is they might attract people that want to maybe, look at the car, take a picture of it for their dream board. But more than not, they attract people that are most likely qualified and in a position to purchase a Rolls Royce if they want one. So most likely, and your word is not, it's your word, not mine, as you said, you're attracting people who can't pay. That was your exact phraseology. So you're attracting them because of what you're putting out, what they observe in you, and the messaging they're getting from you are, that messaging and that vibration is attracting those kind of people. Many years ago, a good friend of mine, I think I mentioned her before. If not, you may want to look her up. Her name is Shama Hyder, Hyder. Today, she's massive in the social media sphere. I mean, she's been, interviewed and quoted in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and Inc. magazine and Forbes and Fortune and Business Week and all these magazines and national publications. I was one of her first social media marketing clients, I believe 11 years ago when she was starting out. And the both of us went to a marketing event. We were invited to speak at it. And when we left, we both talked about it a little later, and I said to her, "Did you sell any coaching?" She's like, "Nope, not a zip." And she's like, "How about you?" And I'm like, "Nope, not a zip." And we both started laughing because the event that we were invited to was called How to Market Without Money. So obviously the audience was full of people who had no money because they were at the event How to Market Without Money. Therefore, we didn't sell anything because there wasn't any money in the audience. So there's so many places that I can go with this, but like I said, I'm going to throw darts, and I've done this for a long time, so it's a very educated guess. Is 50% of the reason that you're not that you're attracting people like this is because of your money consciousness, which we'll talk about a little more in just a moment, and then secondly, it's your marketing, your branding, and positioning. Also, what I know is if you're attracting these kind of people, and when I say these kind of people, people that use the word can't, which I'm assuming that means they don't have money. Well, basically, that's the kind of value that you're showing the marketplace because you're attracting those kind of people. So what you definitely want to look at is, metaphorically, what is your storefront? What do you look like to people that are looking at you and looking at your business? Also, another question here is when you say they don't want to pay you, so what are they wanting? Are they wanting you to work for free? And then, something else you want to look at, because this is what a lot of people do, is they reduce their price points and their value based upon other people devaluing them. So many people let other people, and I've been there, so I am not one to tall stones. So many people set their value based upon what other people think their value is. Many, many years ago, I was going to teach a persuasion and influence seminar. And I was basically at that time more a practitioner of the content than a marketer of the content. This was a lot of years ago. And I wanted to have an event at the Ritz-Carlton. I wanted it to be $1,000 per person. It was a full day of very advanced persuasion and influence training. And I had a guy actually call me and he said, you know what, Jim, I think $1,000 for the day is too high. And he goes, you know what, if I want lunch, I can go buy my own lunch, blah, blah, blah. I don't need it at a nice place like that. I just want to learn from you. And I let that comment actually talk me out of charging the price point that I know that I was worth. And I see so many people doing that as they let the external market set their price points and influence their value. And when we do that, we are absolutely working from the wrong place. You also go on to say your exact words are, I want to stop this as much as possible. Well, my question, instead of stopping it as much as possible, why not stop it completely? I'm going to tell you right now is I don't attract clients who can't pay me. And, that's a big statement that I'm making. I might have one or two people per year that will ask me for a scholarship so they can enroll in my transformational coaching program. But overall, as I'm thinking here, as I'm sharing this with you, overall, I don't attract people who can't pay me because people know the value that I'm putting out in the world. My marketing, my podcast, webinars, speaking events, everything else, my free content, stuff I've got on YouTube, which is not a lot, but I have some stuff there. And the way that I put myself out there, I actually attract people who say, you know what, I want to work with you, and whatever that's going to cost me, I'm going to invest in that. I also want to point out that I'm just going here, not really off a lot of notes, is I don't barter anymore either. Many years ago, I used to barter, and I generally found that I got the raw end of the deal. And also, when people barter, is there's no skin in the game. And if there's no skin in the game, people don't take it as seriously. This day and age, I've recognized if people don't put skin in the game, they don't put money up, they don't show up. And so I don't reduce my fee. I don't do any of that. I don't bargain. I don't barter. None of that. This day and age, where I work from, unless I choose differently, where I work from is here is my consulting fee. Here is my coaching fee. Here is my training fee. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, then, perhaps maybe at another time. Also, people will ask for scholarships, as I'd mentioned, every so often. As a matter of fact, somebody just recently asked me for that. Guys, I've got to tell you that I do have some resemblance of a social worker mentality in me, and I want to help everybody. I really do. I wish I could offer all of my advanced training and my transformational coaching. I wish that I could offer it free. And a couple of years ago, I even tried something a little differently I used to work heavily with real estate agents. And I tried to offer you know what, go through the entire coaching and training, let me transform your life, pay me afterwards, because I really, really want to help people. That's why I'm here. Well, that entire marketing model failed. And the reason why is because, again, people do not appreciate, they do not value when they don't put money up. So you know what? When I did this experiment, I could have transformed a lot of lives, but yet it turned into it turned into a marketing disaster. And I've recognized, as I said, and every one of you, please get this: if people don't put money up, they've got no skin in the game. They do not value your offering. And as a matter of fact, the more that you charge, providing you can deliver, the more that you charge, the more value that people are going to put on it, and actually the more they're going to show up, and the more they're going to get out of it. Many years ago, about 25 years ago, when I used to work at the Hypnosis Institute in New York City, which is where I learned hypnosis, and I worked for, I believe, about 3 years. Back then, my boss charged $750 per session. With inflation, that's probably, I don't know, like $1,200 or something now. And people would say, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money for one session with this guy. This has to work. Well, what he was doing with that high fee, number one, is he was making a really good income. Secondly, he was helping people. But by the law of expectation, people saying this has to work, more times than not, it really, really worked for them because they had the expectation that it had to work for them because they put up what many considered a lot of money. Okay, so back over to you, Andrew. Another question that I have for you is, are you working from desperation? And go back and listen to the episode on money. I don't know which episode it is, but if you're working from desperation, that's a thought. A thought creates a feeling, feeling creates a vibration, and vibration creates a frequency. And if you're working from desperation, that's what you're putting out in the universe, and that's what the universe is reflecting right back to you. Another question, and all of you listening, as you guys know, I ask a lot of questions. Why? Because when I ask questions, I get you to think, and hopefully I get you to look at things in a new way. Another question is this: are you afraid of charging what you think you are worth? Now, there's two different things here and two different places we can go. Is what value do you place on yourself and what do you think that you're worth? And then what actually value does or do your services create in the marketplace? Many years ago, I used to work large events with very large names, people that you know every one of these people. And these events were run by a company, and I knew the owner because I worked with him actually representing the company. And one of the speakers got paid $1 million per speech. And this was back in 2006 or so, I believe. This speaker, and I'm telling you right now, you know who this speaker is. It may or may not be Donald Trump. I'm just saying. And this speaker got paid $1 million per speech, which is a lot of money for a speech. And what he did is he went to the owner of the company and says, I want more money. And the owner said, but yeah, we've got Tony Robbins and George Foreman and Susie Orman and all these other speakers. And this speaker said, but you know what? It's a real estate wealth expo. I'm a real estate expert, blah, 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 real estate name. I'm worth it. And he got a pay increase from $1 million to $1.5 million per speech simply because he thought that he was worth it. So a question that I have for Andrew and the rest of you is, if you don't believe that you're worth what you charge, people aren't going to pay it. And the reason why, let's go back to desperation, is we can read body language, we can read tone, inflection, voice speed, we can read pace of voice, timbre of voice, breathing. Are people breathing, are they breathing faster? Are they breathing slower? Are they talking higher up in their throat as opposed to being grounded in their diaphragm? My point for telling you that, and everyone listening, is that we read people unconsciously. And if you're confident and you believe in yourself, people are going to believe in you. If you're not confident, people are going to read that unconsciously, and they're going to say, you know what, you're trying to charge this big fee or this or that, but there's something in me that tells me this isn't right for me, therefore I am going to pass. Another question that I have for you, Andrew, and everyone listening is, are you afraid, and I hear this a lot, are you afraid that if you charge too much, people are not going to work with you? Well, let's look at that for a moment. Do you think the company Louis Vuitton says if we charge too much for our apparel and our, I don't even know if they have apparel, but our wares and our goods, people aren't going to buy them? Nope. What about Rolls-Royce? Nope. What about Versace? Nope. They don't. What I want you guys to look at is, no matter where you are in the economy, whether you are Neiman Marcus, which is a high-end store here in the United States, or your Rolls-Royce, or your Macy's, or your Walmart, there's always going to be a market for your price point. And if you're working from, well, if I charge too much, they're not going to work with you. Well, guess what? Look at where you're holding your vibration. Look at where you're holding your frequency. And that right there is a bottleneck on your income. This is what I'm going to tell you. People will pay you what you think you're worth as long as you can deliver results. If you charge a lot of money and you deliver outcomes, all right? If you charge subjectively what people consider a lot of money, but you get them the outcome, they're going to be more than glad that they paid you. Why? Because they got more benefit by paying you than by not paying you. Something else I want to share here is, we talk a lot in this podcast about identity. Something that I want every one of you to understand, and I've said this before, is your identity governs value, and your value governs wealth. If you do not value what you bring to the marketplace, If you do not value perhaps your unique perspective or your skills or your years of expertise or whatever it might be, then if you do not value that yourself, then what you do is you're like, I don't know what to charge. I'll charge a lower price. And guess what? Then what happens is people don't value you either. And then what happens is you don't make a lot of money. And then you say, see, I told you I didn't make a lot of money. Therefore, this isn't very valuable. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more that you value your work and deliver beyond expectations, the more money that you are going to make. I want every one of you to get that. The more that you value your work and you deliver beyond expectations, the more money that you're going to make. I also want to add to that, you want to couple with that is prosperity consciousness. I had a guy after the money episode, a guy actually, a kid, he was probably 21, 22 years old in England. And he messaged me on Instagram and said, you know what? I stopped listening to the podcast on money. I'm not buying into it. And this kid had learned that you get paid based upon the value that you create in the world. Well, that's a load of crap. And it can work, but let me tell you this. I know people that create a lot of value in the world, but they still don't make any money. So what you have to look at also back, in that episode on money and go, search for it here in iTunes or wherever you're listening or at my site, jimfortin.com or wherever you're listening. Make sure you listen to the episode on money and listen to it and listen to it and listen to it, because a lot of you are like, yeah, I get it. This makes sense. But it goes in one ear and out the other ear. And then a day later, a week later, a month later, you're right back to your old patterns again. But you know what? You can create all the value in the world. So let me go on that tangent for a moment. You can create all the value in the world. I mean, you can create huge value in the world. But if you do not also couple that with high prosperity consciousness, then you're not going to make the kind of money that you deserve for the value that you're creating in the world. Money, as you've heard me say over and over and over in the episode on money comes from vibration and frequency, not from doing in the world. Something else I see a lot of is that when people are working on a shoestring, and by the way, I've worked on a shoestring before, but I'm going to tell you a valuable lesson that I learned long ago. Wherever you are, if you're in the car, you always hear me say, keep your hands on the wheel and pay attention. But I'm going to share a life-changing lesson for me, and hopefully you get it right now. And that lesson is this. If you want people to give you money, you must look like you have money. Now, some of you are going to argue with that. Well, you can argue all day long. I'm telling you, I've done this for a lot of years, and I've worked with a lot of extremely successful people. And let me give you an example of somebody that I've mentored for a lot of years. I personally coached, and he's one of my best friends. I call him a brother. Is a guy named Drew Canoli, and he is the CEO of a company called Organifi. He's kind of dropped off the radar a little bit with his online presence. He's taking more of a back seat right now, but for many years, he had a massive, massive, massive online presence. I remember back in 2013, I guess that was or 14, when he launched Organifi. You know what? They were running on a shoestring financially, and he was actually even losing money, but his brand looked like $1 million brand. I mean, everything, his graphics, everything was like top notch. And that goes back to, and now his company makes tens and tens and tens, if not even more than that, millions of dollars per year. But what I want you to take away here is this, is if you want people to give you money, you must look like you have money. So, you've heard me say before also, is that life doesn't test us, life reflects us. So what I'm going to say to Andrew and every one of you listening is however and whatever your business is doing is a 100% airtight, ironclad reflection of your identity. Because if you're a small business person and you're an entrepreneur, guess what? Who and however you are is how you show up, and how you show up is what you bring into the business, whether it be your energy vibration, which also affects what you do. And as you know, what you do is only affected by the way that you're being. Your business is 100% reflection of you. So whatever your identity is creates the outcome in your business. So Andrew, a few more questions before we wrap up. What characteristics and ways of being? How do you be? And that sounds like it's bad grammar, but how do you be? And being is a characteristic, and that can be any kind of psychological characteristic, everything from committed to self-disciplined to 100% responsible to high self-value to low self-value. These are all ways of being. And Andrew, what are your ways of being? And then I want to ask you, what are you doing based upon your way of being? And then you just heard me say that whatever you do is affected by the way that you're being. So if you want to make a lot more money and you want to actually be paid what you're worth, then you have to first be that person, and everything follows from there. So let me concretize this with your transformational takeaway. Here it is. Andrew, and you talk about a lot of money. If I made and this is, and by the way, no stones being tossed here. I mean, I make millions a year, but you know what? There was a time to me when $100,000 was a holy cow. What a great year. But let's start there because most people can probably relate to that number. So if you already made $100,000 a year, fully consider that, everyone. If you already, and if this number is low for you, then pick a higher number. Let's say that you make $1 million a year. Then I want you to pick 10 million, but just follow along with the paradigm. If you already made $100,000 a year, how would you be? How would you be? And how would you feel? Characteristics, again, are being. What ways would you emotionally feel? Because, see, these are going to affect what you do, and then your doing is going to actually reflect the outcome for you. So, how would you be? What would you feel? And what would you do if you already, and that's the operative word, already made $100,000 per year? Andrew, what you're doing is what 99% of people do, and I have been there also, and it's a broken strategy. Most people say, you know what, in life, I'm at point A, and I want to go to point B. And by the way, I'm going to do an episode on this at some point, why 99% of people, and I bet you listening right now can tell me that for the most part, you almost never hit your goals. The reason why is because, see, you set your goals from point A where you are, and you say, I want to go to point B. But you know what? You can't be the same person at point A to create the goals that you want or things that you want to happen at point B. Here is the tactical error in thinking that most people make. Most people try to think themselves from point A to point B, and that is backwards thinking. You must actually work from point B, not to point B. And when people set their goals at, they're at point A, when they set their goal to work towards point B, what happens is they continue to be point A and all the characteristics, therefore they never get to B. So what you have to ask yourself, which is point B, if I were already making $100,000 per year, what ways would I be? How would I feel? Because, see, feeling is a language of the unconscious mind. Then what would I do so that I can have the kind of money that I want to have? Okay, there's your transformational takeaway. All right, let me ask you, next episode coming up on Wednesday, you ever been triggered before? Has anyone ever pushed your buttons? Has anyone actually just rattled your cage? If you've been triggered before, or people push your buttons, or you get bent out of shape, you're going to want to listen to the next episode. Why? Because people who trigger you, stay with me here and make sure you listen to the next episode. People who trigger you are your greatest blessings in life. Why? Because the people who trigger you, and I'm kind of laughing because I know some of you are thinking, what the hell are you talking about, Jim? Well, tune in to the next episode and you'll find out. But people who trigger you, most of us avoid those people, literally, our mother-in-laws, our brothers, our friend, whatever. But the people who trigger you are your biggest opportunity to grow and evolve as a being. So, if you're ever triggered and you want to stop that, make sure you tune in to Wednesday's episode. Okay, thanks for listening. Make it a great week, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.